welcome. It's time for another LinkedIn Live, and hopefully this week we're going to be fine on StreamYard. Last week we all had our challenges. Um, Welcome, Colleen Paulson from Pittsburgh. Um,
Thank you for having me.
and we are in a very similar space in terms of trying to support those of a certain age, 50 plus. And I think one of the things we've been chatting about, besides everything else, is just even the idea of getting started, because I know that it's
Yeah.
very, very overwhelming. And when I'm at Lehigh Harrison, especially, that's the first thing. It's like, what do I do if it's happened for the first time? I'm sure you've seen that too, right?
Definitely. So first, let me apologize for being outside. And it feels we're doing some home remodeling work, and it seems like everyone is out cutting their grass right now, and my neighbors. So I'm sorry, but we're going to do the best we can. But yes, it is. I think job loss is one of the top 5 stressors that folks face, and
Mhm.
so I think you're dealing with all of those emotional aspects of losing your job. And then on top of it, if you haven't looked for a job in years, it's overwhelming because it's different than it was back in the 1990s. With LinkedIn and with online applications, it's just not the same world anymore.
One thing that I was kind of curious about, because I struggle with this a little bit too. When I'm looking at resumes and I'm having conversations with people, I want to be supportive, but at the same time, I do want to let them know that some of the things they're doing aren't really a good idea or aren't a best practice. And you don't really want to drop them down and make them feel even worse. But at the same time, you kind of have to let them know diplomatically how to do things. So
Right.
I'm wondering how you handle something like that.
Yeah, I try to temper it. I'll try to start off and say, I'll try to start off and say you have a lot of great experience, right?
Right.
But, here's a good way to present yourself and,
Mhm.
and to really be up on what the industry trends are, right? So, try to not make it personal. Like, I'll have people come to me and say, I'm so embarrassed by this resume. And I'll always say, you have nothing to be embarrassed about, because a lot of times folks are working really hard and they just never needed a resume. And so,
Right.
I totally get how you get yourself to a place where it's out of date, and that's okay. Like, that's fine. That's easy. What I tell folks,
Sure.
folks have done the hard work, right? They've worked hard through their careers. Putting it on paper is easy. We can sit down and we can write that up for you. So people should not be hard on themselves. That is for sure.
I think also we talk about, like, when people are looking for a job. First of all, now it's much more okay to let people know about it. But what I say to people also is, what your experience is when you're going to have a conversation with family and friends. It's going to be a lot different than someone in your industry. It's almost like you have to have multiple conversations, because people want to help, but they have to know how. So if you're going to tell someone who doesn't know the first thing about what you do, you have to give them some idea, whether it's a target company or something, and someone in a specific industry. Again, the more that they know to help you, the better. But it's having multiple elevator pitches, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to know your audience, and that's at every point in the job search process. So whether you're talking with a friend, whether you're, whoever you're networking it with, you really need to think about who your audience is and think about how you're going to serve them. And so that is, we can call it an elevator pitch, you can call it
Right.
whatever, but what it
Mhm.
really is tying, showing how you can deliver impact.
And it's also kind of hard for people to get started, because people who have been out for a while, they're used to doing applying for jobs maybe differently. It used to be before you would just mail their resume in, or just maybe send it as an email. But now it's much more in person, much more your face with networking, and that's a strategy that we try to talk to them about, because they just don't know, so they're at a disadvantage.
Without a doubt, it's just I mean, back in the 90s, folks could even show up in person, right? Like it, and we cared about, like, what kind of paper are you using? Are you using the fancy paper, or,
Right.
how are you presenting yourself? And you know and now today it's just completely different. And if you're not, with so many recruiters being on LinkedIn, if you
Mhm.
don't have a strong optimized profile, you're like completely, you're not doing yourself a service. And that doesn't matter if you're looking for a job right now or not. Having that updated profile can open up so many, windows for you. Like, it's just a no-brainer.
And just to give you an example, I see some people here. One of the things I found talking to someone, they didn't have their photo up on LinkedIn. So what I found out afterwards is, through the settings, they only had it for first connections only.
Right.
I mean, I see people on the call that have, let's just say LinkedIn user. And my gut feeling is if they looked at their settings, they might see that's an issue. But again, my first reaction might have been, where is your picture? But again, it's little things like that, that
Yeah,
people,
without a doubt. Like that is so I see that all the time where folks are like, why have my picture in there? And I'm like, did you look at the settings? Because
right,
how do you know? I mean, until you go back and look at the settings, you don't know how other people are seeing you.
right. So I do want to do some call outs. I have Carol McCullough here from New Jersey. Um, and I have Drew Kugler from Philly, and of course, Meryl Cass. Feel free to ask some questions of us because we all come from a different type of experience. And the one thing that I have found working with people of my age, not of a certain age, is that they're very willing to listen and they need the emotional support too, but they have to know where to start. And sometimes, like you said, I can look at the resume and it's easy to go through the dates and stuff because you put that down, but it's now making that resume relevant for a future employer or putting yourself in the best light, and they just don't know, but they need that support.
Right. And if you don't know where to get started, you need to really think about what your goals are. And so, sometimes folks will come to me and say, well, you can just write me a resume. And I'm like, I will not start your resume until you know what you want to do with it.
Right.
So, if you're not sure of where to get started, start looking at job descriptions and then go back to your resume and say, hey, am I calling out these skills?
Right.
And if you're not, like, that's a great place to get started. I'll also tell folks, try a brain dump. So maybe just sit down 5 or 10 minutes a day. And if you're better on pen and paper, do that, computer, whatever works best for you. But take that time to, just brainstorm. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can go back and refine it later, but just little things like that, like little steps. You're not going to write that whole resume today, most likely. It's going to take some iterations to kind of get there. But yeah, if you don't know where to get started, and maybe you might need more time. Maybe you need whatever everyone is in a different financial
Right.
situation, but maybe you need a couple weeks before you even sit down to think about it. And
And
that's okay too.
I think you bring up a good point because a lot of times when I see a resume, the most recent experience has the least in it because they've just put something down really quick because they think they
Right.
have to look for a job right away. And
Right.
that brain dump, just sit down and think about it because I also see a lot of resumes that are they're task list driven, which is not. I mean, it's not really the best thing to put on there. But again, it's how you let people know about that. I think is so important.
Right. And I've had clients sometimes ask a friend that they worked with and say, well, what do you know? What did I work on with you that you found impactful? And maybe, just, so you can use that twofold. One is just for networking and just to have someone to talk to. But another piece of it is to kind of jog your memory and kind of give yourself credit for things. I mean,
Right.
so many of us are humble. We were raised to be humble. We're not supposed to toot our own horns, but I mean, I'm sorry, when you're sitting down to write your resume, you're going to have to, really think about all the great work you did, and you're going to have to give yourself credit for it.
And one of the latest changes that's rolling out on LinkedIn, which we hope doesn't go too far, is that someone who has a basic account will be limited to 10 personalized connection requests a month.
Right.
And that has hit in a few places already. Um, like other things before, it's being tested or being tried out with some people here. So a lot of us are pushing back because it defeats the purpose of networking. Now, I know you and I both know this is probably a money grab that they want people to get premium, but still, this is what LinkedIn is all about.
Yeah. Maybe you hit the nail on the head there with what is LinkedIn all about? If it's for networking, then how do you justify charging people, especially the folks that are going to be using this are often out of work, so they
Mhm.
don't have the money to buy premium. And if I mean, if we're not letting people use personalized invites, that it's just, are we almost promoting more spammy type stuff? Like people just reaching out just to reach out. I don't know. The whole intention of it it doesn't feel great.
It defeats the purpose of what you're using LinkedIn for. And
Right.
with so much automation on the platform and so much other information, there's other things to do. But I'm really hopeful, and a bunch of us are hopeful that they will not go through with this. So I'm just looking at this comment here from Nigel. With so much regular advice on the best use of LinkedIn, Can you estimate how many professionals have good setup or make best use of it? I mean, I will tell you this, that a lot of the senior people and a lot of the people that are on the platform, their profiles are not good because they've never had to use them, and they don't realize that there's a whole aspect to marketing yourself and putting yourself out there because they were never taught. So they know they put their resume up there way back when, and they never really took advantage of it. I would say maybe 10 to 15% of the people on this platform, if you're lucky.
That's what I was going to say. That was because I'll just say for the folks that I work with, they, by the time we were done working, they're where they need to be, but people just haven't had, they don't have the time or the energy to put into it. And they don't realize sometimes that like 90% of recruiters are here looking for talent. And so, by not, they don't realize what they're missing.
I was actually working with an attorney about a year or so ago, and he had an attorney's profile. It's all the attorney's stuff. And I tried to get him to personalize a little bit. And he said, I can't do that. And I said, why not? And it took a lot of conversations to get him to realize that it's not a commercial per se, but you really have to personalize yourself a little bit. And I think a lot of people, especially at the senior level, they you're no different than anyone else on this platform. You're the same. You have the same stake as anyone else. So you gotta. And I wanted to ask you what you think about kind of the engagement aspect along those lines.
I mean, I think if you're, so I work with people that sometimes don't want to engage, basically they have their profile because that's what they're supposed to do. But when it
Right.
comes down to really engaging on content or posting or, kind of connecting with people that they don't really know, aren't comfortable with that, I can go either way. I get how, I think in the end you need to do what works for you. And so, some people it comes more naturally to. Other folks, they're reticent to kind of put themselves out there. I think maybe kind of little baby steps to like to kind of build yourself up. So maybe it's starting with commenting and then going from there. There's ways that you can, just a comment a day or
Mhm.
maybe a comment a week, whatever that is, but try to step outside your comfort zone and then go from there.
And Frank asked a question about metrics used to see if your profile is effective. I will say this at the very least. You got to have an about section that's relevant. You got to make sure you're putting skills on there in all the different places. But then above all, recruiters are looking at the title heading, they're looking at the about section, they're looking at the skills, but it's not just about recruiters looking at a profile, it's about having a relevant profile in that way. And a lot of job seekers don't look at doing a profile two different ways. For example, if you have an about section and you don't list what you're looking to do in that about section, how are they going to find you? Um,
Yeah.
if you're not listening, remote opportunities, if you're not, sometimes you just have to kind of ask yourself, would I be able to find me in this industry if I looked at my profile?
Yeah. You bring up a lot of good points. The headline piece, I kind of go back and forth on what the best practice is here because I'm seeing more where folks are like trying to be creative for the sake of being creative, but you have no idea what they're doing by the, from the headline. And so you want to make sure that headline really communicates, if you have an impressive title or you've had one in the past, like put it in there and maybe lead with it because when a recruiter's looking at it, when you have this generic statement like I deliver XYZ to, whoever, that's great. But you want if the recruiter's scanning through, you just want it to be like super clear to them what you do. And so, yeah, use the headline to be creative, but also make sure it's conveying the right value. And the same with the about section. You're exactly right. You really want to be careful about what you're putting there and be thoughtful. And if you're not getting hits, then I would say, it might not be effective. I mean, the metric question is a good one. How do we measure what is success looks like? And maybe what you do is you make your LinkedIn goals. Is your goal to have, and that's, I know that's tough to quantify, but if you're not getting hits, then think about, what kind of information should be in your profile. So if someone's searching for a project manager and they're not finding you, well, then maybe why aren't they finding you?
And sometimes, and we talked about this before, if you do a search for job specs on LinkedIn, you'll find some requirements in the job spec that may be relevant, or you may realize that the jobs you're looking for changed title over time.
Right.
That happens a lot. Or one company says one thing, but it's really something else because for whatever reason.
The title thing is so difficult, and sometimes I'll tell my folks, maybe don't focus on title, maybe focus on keywords instead, because different titles, the title thing, it just keeps getting more confusing. Sometimes a startup will give you like a senior VP title, and maybe that's not, but if you're looking at a Fortune 500 company, you might be a director, or even a manager. So you want to make sure that the right keywords are there so that you can really be found.
And if you know what your companies are, let's say your 5 to 10 companies, go to the company pages that are there, or do searches on LinkedIn within the companies for people that are there. Because a lot of the recruiters on LinkedIn, and someone made the comment about they're getting the wrong job titles. I get job leads all the time still. They are nothing close to what I'm qualified for, because you're just throwing something against the wall. And I
Right.
think, again, there's different types of recruiters. And sometimes one of the things I always talked about, I show this as a demo, is if you do a search on LinkedIn for the keywords like I'm hiring or we're hiring, you'll find anyone who has that in the title. And then you can do even a
Right.
more granular search. Now, does that mean you're going to get a job from them? No, but you can build relationships. Although now with not as many personalized connection requests, we'll have to go wait and see on that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I do.
But I think for those of a certain age, the first step is really, what do I do? And the first thing you need to do is really take a step back, and not that first day send my resume out. Even if it's a dump for the weekend or something, or maybe it's just having a conversation.
And so I've had clients who they're getting hits, right? They're getting interviews, but then they go into the interview and they're bombing it because they haven't worked through all of that emotional stuff, and so they haven't rebuilt their confidence yet, and they're like, I call it on tilt, but basically it's like the old poker term where you had a bad beat and now you don't know how to rebound from it. And so you're exactly right, because you can have the best resume in the world, you can be, but until you're like mentally prepared to go in and restart it, you're going to have a tough time. So yeah, I mean, again, I understand financially different folks have different situations, but you really want to make sure that you've worked through all of that, and that you shouldn't feel bad about being laid off. I think I've seen statistics, 62% of people have had a career break, and those are for all different reasons. Lots of people have been laid off. There's nothing that you should be ashamed about here. So, there's, but I get how it's just natural to feel bad about it.
And Linda, who was a guest of mine a couple weeks ago, focus on skills and keywords is very important. The idea of doing a
Yeah.
job search based on the skills.
No, I
Um,
agree, Linda. I think that that's a great place to start because the titles are so wonky these days that skills and keywords are a great place to start. I agree completely.
and I would get rid of a lot of the words that I see on resumes all the time, which we all have: experienced,
I
successful. If you weren't successful, why would you put it down?
Yeah.
I mean, all those things. I mean,
Seasoned is my least favorite. If you
okay.
seasoned, just it drives me up a wall. I don't know why, but I think it I think it's that it has the exact opposite effect that you think it does. You think it's saying like almost like distinguished, but it's not. And I just seasoned, I can't stand. Detail oriented, results focused, all of those. Yeah, they're not doing you favors if you have them.
Expert communicator.
Expert
Again,
communicator.
you have to say, why would you put that down?
Well, I think sometimes people are at a loss for words. And so let's say you're looking at a template or, your friend's resume or an example, and that's easy to put down. And you want to show that you're an expert communicator. So you think by saying that is it, but it's not helping. And,
The other,
and
no, go
but
ahead.
I was going to say, we've looked at thousands of resumes, right? So
Yes.
after when you've looked at so many, like, that, I don't know. So if you might, so folks sitting down to write might not have seen as many examples of it as we have.
Right. The other thing I get a lot of is I call it alphabetese. I get so many alphabet terms of things that people did that no one would have any idea about unless you're at the place. And it sounds great, but it means absolutely nothing to most people. And I know it's maybe an IT thing, but again, it's if I don't know what it is, not
Yeah,
going to be
you
that.
got to clean it up. And I don't think you don't have to hire a professional, but like have your spouse or have a friend or have someone look at it and say, "Can you understand this? Is it readable to you?" Because if those acronyms and those terms may be something that like comes very easily to you, but you want to make sure that when the recruiter sits down to read it, that
Right.
they know exactly what you're talking about.
Which goes back to the whole discussion. If you're going to tell your family and friends and you're going to throw these different words out, they're going to just forget it. It's
Right. But another piece I'm going to say is that if you show your resume to 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different opinions. And
absolutely
I've heard some people say 12 different. I mean, so you're going to get different opinions. You kind of want to like pick your 2 or 3 that you're going to listen to, because you don't want to get bogged down in that like information cycle, like paralysis where you're just stuck, right? So, it's great to get opinions, but like don't show everyone, like just
no,
show.
no. It's like how long. Like I'll get a question: how long should a resume be? I mean, there is no one right or wrong specific answer. There's ideas. I've worked with resumes at Leac Harrison that are 10 pages. Now they're 10 pages because they're in an academic industry, and maybe they list patents, and maybe it's right, but even then, you have to kind of balance it.
Right. Right. And it depends on where you are in your career. And it also depends on what kind of content is in those pages,
Right, right.
And so, for me, the biggest thing is you want to catch the reader's eye right away.
Sure.
So you want to have a catchy headline, you want to have a great executive summary. And then guess what? If you have a 10-page resume and you catch the reader's eye, well, then, that's going to make the biggest difference. But if it's 10 pages, talking about irrelevant information, then yeah, I mean, you don't want to waste people's time.
Well, it's like here, such as. I see a lot of such as. Is the word that drives me crazy is when people say summary and then they list the summary on a resume. I mean, we know what it is. You're almost better off with the job title, with the keywords there. But again, it's what people are taught. I still see references upon request.
Yeah.
I still see that a lot.
Objective statement.
I still see get addresses on resumes.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I won't see like a LinkedIn URL,
Right.
right? And that you want to make sure you have that LinkedIn URL.
Well,
And
the only downside to that, I've done this in a couple people, if they put it on there, they have no profile yet, really. So I'll say,
okay, well that's a different. If you don't have your profile built out, then
right,
no.
right,
But
right, right.
if you have a profile and it's built out, you want to have that URL.
Absolutely. And even the idea about including and not including. I go back and forth about this one. Old email address, someone who has a Yahoo or an AOL email address or something, that that kind of would signal something. And some recruiters say no. I mean, what do you think about having like that old email address?
So that's a great question. I just finished a client today with the Yahoo address, and I told her that I probably recommend moving to a Gmail that looks cleaner. But I don't think that that's going to keep you from getting a job, right? I think that it's just one of those nice to have. It just looks cleaner, um I don't know. It's just kind of showing that you're with the times, right? But is it a deal breaker? I don't think it's a deal breaker, but if I was looking for a job, I'd get myself a nice Gmail. I
And
mean,
I
it's
agree.
free.
It's also important to personalize the LinkedIn URL,
Absolutely.
which I found out in one of my sessions is most people didn't even know how to do that.
I know.
So we take that for granted.
but it's super easy, and
Yeah.
it's just another thing to clean up. Once you're putting it on your resume, it looks clean, it shows you're savvy. But again, is that going to keep you from getting a job? Like,
No.
I'm not going to say it's going to keep you from getting a job, but it just it just presents you in a better light. That's all.
So the other thing I found along those lines is if you personalize the URL, your old URL is still out there for 6 months.
Really?
So if you change it, but your
Yeah.
resumes out there have the old URL, they'll still be valid for up to 6 months, because people ask me what happens if I change it and they go to the old URL on my resume, will it be found? Because
That's good to know. I didn't realize that. That's really good
what
to know.
that was I looked it up because people
Yeah.
said that, like, what happens, like if you have an email address that isn't good anymore, let's say different phone number. I mean, it kind of goes along with that, but it's definitely so there's a question here. How do you recommend listing hard skills once you're at a higher level? I'm in marketing. I've kept, when I find I get hit up with a crew looking to fill mid-level roles.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. So I mean I would say that if you're not getting the types of hits you want, then that's always time to kind of revisit what you have out there. And so I would take a look at the types of roles that you're targeting and make sure to emphasize those skills in your profile. But as long as you have those mid-level skills in there, you're going to get kind of those hits. But again, we go back to, what we were talking about earlier, if making sure you have it clear in your about section and your headline, kind of what you're targeting, that should hopefully help to kind of streamline that as well.
And someone actually answered this question. It is assumed that you can supply references upon request. If you need to, this is where LinkedIn might come in with recommendations too. If you can't, I mean, again, it's a sign that it used to be references upon request. The assumption is you'll definitely do that. And, I do agree with an old email. I mean, Gmail is almost 20 years old. It's all about a perception. I think what the most important thing to think about is that, and I had this happen to me with a couple of clients, they had their work email address on their resumes and they're not there anymore. And it's like, what's going on?
Right. Yeah, I've seen the same. And so, and especially with folks that have been with the same company 20 years, they're not even like thinking twice about it.
And at the same time, make sure your LinkedIn email address is associated with another email address. Because I've had clients, we're actually working with a client now that lost their LinkedIn account because they didn't change their email address and they can't get to it. And so LinkedIn will have, yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, but I'm sure it happens all the time. I mean,
It happens all the time, and some people end up creating a new account, so there's two accounts there.
oh no. Yeah. I mean, that's why it's horrible, but you really need to be prepared for, I mean, I don't know, job security just is not out there anymore. So you need to be prepared just in case.
So what if I only want contract work and only want to work remotely? So first of all, you can definitely change those settings within what you're looking for. When they open to work, it'll tell you what you have different options. But again, if you mention on there what you're looking for within the about section or elsewhere, that'll be helpful. Because again, and I say this again and again, if I don't know what you're looking for, how can I find you? And you can also do searches for contract work and remote work on LinkedIn as well. And I think you want to be, so again, you have to really define what that is. Or also, if you want to work remotely, maybe putting content up that shows you how you can work remotely. It's about engaging, for sure.
All of that. Although I think, aren't we seeing, as far as remote roles, it's not there. It's definitely going more to a hybrid environment. There's not a lot of remote roles left.
And I think that's another question to bring up. If it's remote, what you want to make sure that, or ask the question, if it's going to go hybrid later on, are you going to be able to work there? Because remote means different things. Like, I'm in the New York City area, so could I work in the city? Absolutely. Could I work in New Jersey? But if I'm working out of Chicago or somewhere else, I'm not going to be able to do that. So, I mean, I want to ask that question up front as a job seeker and hopefully get the right answer, because otherwise I'm wasting their time and my, in my time too.
Right.
Do you find certain industries or Are you getting more clients in, or do you find, or is it kind of across all different
It's
industries?
kind of mixed. I mean, I would say tech is really tough right now,
Mhm.
especially for folks in their 40s and 50s. But I am seeing layoffs across all industries right now. It just feels like that's where, I mean, we were talking earlier, before we started this video, that,
Right.
September surge, like it, it was there somewhat, but it wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be. People are getting jobs, but they aren't, it's, it, things aren't where they were in 2022. And that's not to say that, things aren't getting better. There are jobs out there, but it's definitely a tougher environment than it was then.
And Linda brings up a good point. It's good to have a separate email address just for job search also, which kind of goes along those lines, because if you're using the same email address for everything, everything just gets into the same place.
Right.
And so that's as good an opportunity to take advantage of that.
And check your spam periodically, because sometimes good messages go to spam and you don't want to miss out on that great opportunity.
And as Scott said, because again, LinkedIn will be able to merge two profiles. Someone made the mistake of trying to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And what they ended up happening is they ended up deleting one of their profiles.
Yeah.
LinkedIn help is not very helpful in and of itself. So that's the other thing. If you have a question, ask your network,
Yeah.
because just because, I mean, everyone is here to help and support each other,
Absolutely.
of anything else. And one question, even with the algorithms and things, none of us know the answer to any of that. We can't really tell you why things are the way they are, much as we might like to, but it's just about, you just want to put yourself out there. Even the open to work banner, I have different answers about that every day. Um, I
Yeah.
don't think it hurts. I'm not sure it helps. Um, Recruiters I know do searches that way, but it's only certain recruiters. It's not everyone.
Right. I mean, I think that goes with everything with career development. It depends. Like
Exactly.
so many of the answers, it depends. And I think it's, what works for you. If you want to do that, then that's great. If you don't, I don't think it's going to hurt you. So I'm kind of with you. I don't know that it's like I think sometimes when folks come to me, they're looking for like that golden ticket. Like, how can I
Right.
get this job? And putting that banner up isn't necessarily that.
No, and even when you're having conversations, you don't when you even when you connect with someone, you don't necessarily, you just want to kind of connect with them and maybe start a relationship. I really hope LinkedIn doesn't limit the number of personalized requests. Um, but even if they do, then what you can do is ask other people to engage with or for you on your behalf, perhaps. I mean,
Mhm.
there's going to be workarounds for everything. It's
That's
really
right.
right
That's
now,
right.
it's making for great content for a lot of us right now, to be honest.
Right. Well, I think we're all kind of curious of where, if we have this, and like what else is coming next? Is this,
My prediction is open to work will be required to be paid next. That's my
yeah,
prediction.
that's where it comes down to. Is that where things are going to go? I'll be very curious to see.
Well, I think there is the problem is people don't have the money if they're
I
out of
know
work.
that.
So it defeats the purpose. So I know at Lee Act Harrison, we're hoping to get a license or some sort of a mechanism that maybe we can do that, and maybe other clubs and like could do that as well, to maybe grandfather in all the members. But I don't know what's up their sleeve. I mean,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where things go from here.
and if anyone from LinkedIn is listening in, which we all say once in a while, we love the platform. We
Right.
totally love the platform. All we want to do is get some insights so that we can help support the people that we're working with. We're not here to bash. I mean, we all want what's best here. So,
Well, especially when the best practice for years has been send a personalized request.
yeah.
And now, so now what's the best practice? Is the best practice that we have to like advise people to go for premium? Where are things going?
Well, my hope is that LinkedIn allows people to get more than 30 days of free premium if they're going to do that, which they do offer. I know that the military, they get a year free premium. So
Mhm.
maybe if you prove that you're out of work, maybe that's going to be the same mechanism. That opens up a whole other personal,
Right.
personal information thing.
Right. Exactly.
So again, this is the old pro and con for open to work. Um, this is what I would say if you're going to use open to work. Have it on, take it off for a little while, and then put it back on later on. It's kind of like in the old days with the job boards. If you put a resume up on a Monday after making a change to it before, it becomes a new resume. So you become, and I've seen this on the other end, if you are open to work, people that have it will get notified that someone turns it on. And I've seen it in real time. But putting it open to work and announcing to the world, hey, I'm open to work, I'm looking for A, B, C, and D. Again, you make it engagement, but is it the right type of engagement? So what do you think about that?
I think the A/B testing is perfect. I think doing, kind of testing it both ways if you're curious, because I do think, kind of what we were talking about, like people think it's this golden ticket. Like all I need to do is turn on open to work and then magically like jobs are going to come to me. And you need to have that robust profile in order to attract those options, whether you have open to work or not. So, for me, I would be more worried about building a strong profile that has the right skills and keywords so that I can be found on LinkedIn. And then everything else is just going to fall into place for you.
And I've actually seen people, instead of the open to work banner, they create their own banner with their own
Yeah.
picture, which is like another marketing thing. And again, I don't know for sure how it works or not, but it's another way to set yourself apart.
It is. It's interesting because you do want to stand out. You want to stand up for the right reasons. It goes back to the open to work post. Should you send a post to say I'm looking for work or not? And I've had people ask me that. It goes back to it depends. It, I think for me, what's more effective is behind the scenes reaching out to 5 or 10 folks that are influential that could help you and saying, listen, I'm looking for work. What's out there? Do you have any suggestions for me? And making it reciprocal, helping folks when they need it. But to me, that feels more effective than putting that open to work post out there. But how do you feel about it?
Well, I agree. I think, and I also mention this when people lose their jobs, go on LinkedIn and search for people you used to work with.
Yeah.
Just just search for them. They will know who you are. I think it depends. That's the catchword. Everything is it depends. I mean, every situation, even on this platform, everyone has a different situation, and some things will work for some, and some won't work for others.
Well, that's exactly it. There is no, anyone trying to sell you like this end all be all strategy. Different things work for different people in different industries at different stages of your career.
Yeah,
So, and you have to go back and think what's most comfortable for me, what works for me. So, we can tell you just some general best practices,
right.
but it depends. Is like be
Yeah.
it depends on your situation.
I mean, I would not put my resume as an attachment on LinkedIn for
Yeah, I
sure.
wouldn't either. No, I
Um,
wouldn't either.
I believe that chronologically, you want to list all your jobs the same way, but you can go into different detail. I think you want to make it as easy as possible. I mean, again, the latest thing that again, LinkedIn keeps changing things. Now they're only putting two. Now they're only allowing two skills on top instead of three.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating in a way because you want to keep sharing best practices, but those best practices always change. And as Frank says, it's a crapshoot.
You're exactly right, Frank.
I mean, I I wish. I mean, I did a post last week that I thought was going to be amazing, and went nowhere. Now I know rationally what happened, but we just go back and do it again.
Well, you know what? It's so you keep hearing like the algorithm keeps changing, but I kind of hear you because sometimes the post when I really feel like something is going to like be great and it doesn't necessarily hit the same way. It is iterative. You're constantly testing things to see how it works.
Yeah, I've started actually untagging or not tagging many people anymore, and I've gotten rid of the hashtags just to see because I'm not
Yeah,
sure what difference they make, but it's just another way. And one of the reasons I do the testing is so I can answer the questions that people ask me. Because if I
right.
haven't done something, uh, um, I can only say it depends without any proof.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that you know, LinkedIn is dynamic, the job search is dynamic, so different things are going to work at different times. So it definitely makes sense to try out different things.
So, Colleen, I want to thank you very much for the conversation today. I'll let you get back to your beautiful sunny day in Pittsburgh.
Thank you for your patience as we
No,
deal with.
no problem at all. I mean, it's this is what life's all about now. So,
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you
yeah.
today.
And have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and good luck in job search.
Bye.